Ladies and gentlemen, we will now moving into our keynote session, where our speakers will share perspectives on the future of digital transformation, AI, and BIM adoption in the construction industry. Our first keynote speaker is Mr. Tony Osude, Chief Market Delivery Officer of Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. He will be sharing on the skills of the future in construction for an AI world. Please.
I'm glad you've taken that photograph down. That was probably when I was a lot younger, about 3 years ago, and maybe a lot grayer, a lot less grey anyway. So welcome, good afternoon, and good to see all you here, and thank you to Glodon for inviting us to this event today, and really appreciate the time and opportunity to build our relationships. So I'm going to focus on this topic around skills in an AI world, particularly around construction. And I'm going to do so primarily because it's probably the number one thing that's in front of our members throughout the world today, and where they're looking for the greatest guidance and where they're seeing the greatest amount of complexity. And I do think also there is something that we can do as a group and as a set of partners to help them solve that problem. And I'll move forward in a second, but I guess, is this the forward and back? Three things I'm going to bring out in the course of the presentation. Number one, the firms that actually win this race are not necessarily the ones with the most AI pilots. We think is going to be the ones that have got the strongest skills, the best data discipline, and the best governance. So we think human beings have got a big part to play in this, but are often forgotten. And that's why I'm going to focus on skills. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the role of the professional. It's not fewer professionals, it's just professionals doing something different. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that difference is. And then thirdly, how responsible AI is a very important part of this sector coming forward. And then finally, skills becoming part of that leadership race going forward. So that's me, so I'll skip that. Now, some of you will know RICS, many of you won't, so I'll just give you a couple of minutes. I'll just say a couple of minutes on RICS. Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. We're headquartered in London. We're a body nearly 170 years old. And we're a charter body, and we're a membership body, and we're also a regulator. So our members are chartered surveyors, and 143,000 members throughout the world, including in China, Southeast Asia, the Americas, Europe, and so on and so forth. And these are professionals who work in multiple sectors, from construction to investment to development to facilities management and asset management. So many of them, probably about 30,000, 40,000 of those, are quantity surveyors in the property space. We're a public interest body, so we set out to champion the public interest in the built and natural environment. And our members are really at the fore of doing that. Part of our regulatory responsibility is to make sure our members have the right skills and right level of competence. They put in place the right judgment for the right outcome for their clients and customers and employers. And also, finally, they act responsibly and ethically. And that's a big part of what we do. We also have a number of firms, roughly about 15,000 firms globally, property firms such as Savills, JLL, Knight Frank, and so on and so forth, who we regulate as part of our infrastructure. And finally, also I say penultimately, we deliver training to aspiring chartered surveyors who want to come into the profession, as well as those who are in the profession at all different levels, and provide thought leadership around where the profession is going and how we're going to help navigate that future. And that's one of the things we're obviously going to be talking about today. And I think this kind of gives you an indication of where we think the construction industry is. So we all familiar with low productivity, lack of data, cost overruns, and quite difficult kind of environments and able to manage. And what we're seeing is AI really beginning to expose some of the major cracks in the construction industry. In the UK, where I said RICS is based, I'll give you an example. The government have an ambition to build 300,000 homes, but in essence are not unable to do so because there aren't the people, there aren't the skills, and indeed the cost of materials is incredibly high. And also there are long histories of cost overruns. And that just gives you a really good idea of where they are. But what is interesting about all of this, every single day, the demand for buildings is 13,000 buildings every day in the world. Now, I agree that those buildings should be sustainable, they should be conserving of energy, but also we should be able to measure the whole life carbon of those buildings. And that's one of the things, of course, we promote here at RICS. But we can kind of see that how AI is going to be able to drive some of those workforce skills, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of our industry leaders are looking for a response, and this is one of the topics in front of them every single day. Now, interestingly, and this is going to just point out some of the big gaps that we're seeing. I'm not going to give these numbers in any particular order. So what we know is that 70% of our members and our professionals who work in construction believe that AI will help them deliver greater value, which is interesting, right? So you've got this huge demand, 13,000 buildings, 70% of your construction professionals saying we need AI to help us deliver that. However, only 1% of those people and those firms have used any form of AI or scaled it. An incredibly low number. 45% have no AI use whatsoever, right? Haven't even introduced it to their firms. And even if they did have AI, they didn't have people with the skills to put it into effect. So you can think of, if you look at this, where I was saying there's a big gap in terms of expectations, in terms of where the industry really is. And that is why I'm saying is for us to help address that gap. And we think it's about people and it's about technology and how those two things come together. But what we can also see is that a lot of the early adopters have taken to the technology, driving that capability around the technology is racing ahead of their people. They're not able to really use it in maximum effect. And we believe the winners are going to be the people who get the balance right. The balance between technology enablement and also the skills to put it into effect. And they will probably drive success in the future. I won't spend too much time on this because we kind of talked about it a lot during the course of this morning, but kind of where we're seeing transformation around the project lifecycle in AI. Again, mentioned at the beginning around delivery and cost management, which are kind of very key measurables in any construction project. Asset management around digital twins, optimization of heating systems and cooling systems and so on and so forth, and what have you. And the role really for us in terms of the professional is not necessarily fewer people. We just believe it's going to be different people doing different things than they are today. But many of those kind of areas of transformation and outcomes, I'm sure you'll be familiar with, so I won't go over those. However, I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of RICS, and I think the role of us as a collective in terms of how we do begin to shape the people element of technology, and what are the key areas to build on. As I mentioned, I think we see the shape of the people being different, and what they do is going to be a little bit different, which means we've got to train them for that. So, and I'm going to summarize just some of these. So first of all, it's less about the execution and more about managing the outputs. So in effect, we think about sort of using AI, the outputs AI, using critical judgment to assess those outputs and also how they should be applied. More about the construction professional being an advisor and an interpreter, so being data ready, being able to interpret data and translate them into insights that can be applied. And critically, and I don't want to underestimate this, is trust and accountability. So yes, we're all able to use the technology, but who is responsible for the results of that technology if I apply it in any given setting? In our view, and given what I mentioned earlier about RICS and our responsibility as regulator of our members and also the profession generally, that accountability sits with the individual. So if I use a piece of technology that gives me an outcome and I apply that outcome without critically assessing it, and that outcome seems to be wrong because maybe the data is corrupted or maybe the inputs weren't right to begin with, I am responsible. So that accountability is critically important, I think, in terms of the individuals, which means we need those professionals to understand what the artificial intelligence is composed of. So we kind of see this as kind of then shaping that skills demand of the construction professional going forward. And from what you can hear, that is not the way we are today. And just more tangibly, what that might look like from core construction professions. And I should say, so we conducted a number of surveys and papers in the course of 2025 around skills, around responsible use of AI, but also AI in construction. So I'm just giving you a bit of a summary from some of those papers and some of the leadership forums that we run at RICS across the world. So certainly in QS, assisting in terms of commercial judgment, so cost management in particular, project management. So things that are kind of giving them a lot more certainty and a lot more clarity and a lot more transparency as well, and for our members who are working as quantity surveyors or working in construction, in interacting with their clients, that's the kind of information they're going to need to have trust and have confidence in the work that they do. So hence, positioning them so that they've got those right skills, they've got the ability to use the technology, understand the technology, and provide assurance around the technology is absolutely key. And we don't see that technology as a standalone would necessarily get the level of adoption that it needs to basically drive to be optimal. So hence it's about the technology with the people. And when we start to look at the people, we look at sort of 4 skill stacks that we would be looking for people to invest in. And some of these are kind of touched on. So digital and data fluency, so really understanding kind of data quality and in making sure there's the ability to interpret that. Applying judgment, so applying critical thinking on the outcomes of any data analysis or outcomes of any AI, on that. Ensuring there is good governance around the inputs that go into any kind of modeling, both from a data point of view, but also algorithms, and making sure that there are no biases in the data. Now, we'll be familiar with ethical biases in data from other applications of large language models around the world, whether it's in the justice system, automotive, or otherwise. And this really is a kind of way of making sure we're able to govern against that. And importantly, just the human skills. So we know the power of the human brain and the diverse nature of the human brain, and the ability for them to apply that in terms of their judgment using experience, that competence, as I mentioned, ethical framework and professional judgment is absolutely key. But also in terms of how humans work with one another. So skills of communication, articulation, collaboration across different disciplines are likewise. So at a high level, we see there's 4 fundamental areas in terms of the human skill stack. And I mentioned governance quite a lot and ethics, and this is really about trust. So we know that one of the number one challenges or concerns the public have and consumers of our products will have is the integrity of AI. Not just about job replacement or the impact on community, but the integrity of the data or the models and the outcomes, more particularly around the models. So part of what we're looking to do, certainly RICS as a regulatory body, is to provide some degree of governance, some degree of oversight, so we can build trust, so we can build confidence. And for us, that's kind of doing it through the professionals, so the individuals, regulating the individuals, making sure they have high levels of professional judgment. Secondly, making sure there's good standards and frameworks around data governance. Thirdly, making sure there's transparency in terms of communication, as I mentioned earlier, and particularly how these things are built, I guess. And then finally, accountability. At the end of the day, if one of our members deployed an AI model in this organization, and the outcomes were suboptimal, they were wrong, misleading, or misrepresented, that member will be responsible. And there are potentially cases around that where people are using AI for things like valuation of buildings or even valuation of materials and so on and so forth. They ultimately will be responsible. They are responsible and accountable in any other sphere of their work. But those things are necessary, and that regulatory framework is necessary if we are to ensure there's confidence in the adoption of technology. I've got 5 minutes left. I will be quick. Another big thing we saw is leadership, or the lack of leadership, both at an industry level but also at an organizational level. So how do leaders kind of stand up and to drive adoption, drive that skills piece, but also drive good governance? And we're kind of looking at kind of guidance that we would give to organizations. So what organizations need to do next? Again, for us, there are 4 things. Number 1, a data quality foundation. I think we heard that today. So, and I think a lot of organizations are still kind of working on that. A very structured program of skills development around AI, touching on people and technology, those skills that I mentioned earlier in the last four points. A governance and ethics framework to make sure of accountability, trust, and confidence, but also, and importantly, collaboration and partnerships. So we believe that industry coming together around some of these challenges, some of these opportunities, through knowledge sharing, can together reach a much better and more productive place. For us at RICS, as I mentioned earlier, we will be focusing on ensuring there's a good regulatory framework for our members, ensuring our members have access to the right skills, levels of development to step into this, making sure that there is accountability and transparency. We expect our members, and our members expect of themselves, to work to the highest standards, so we'll be holding people to that standard and also making sure there's that integrity in all that we do. I'll just skip that and just start to close off. So I promised at the beginning what we were going to go through really was those 3 things. First, the winning firms are not going to be the ones who run the number of AI pilots or are seen to be leaders in the field today. They're really going to be the ones that can match people and their skills with technology to deliver results. We believe that the future of the professional going forward becomes more valuable, not less. They're just doing something slightly different to what they're doing today. We believe responsible AI is absolutely critical to confidence, and that transparency and openness around that. Otherwise, we will not get adoption by community and society. And finally, the skills race is here. It's here in front of us, and indeed, it's now becoming a leadership race. And it's already started. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.